To start our panel discussion, I would also like to invite our City Council member, Ms. Marianne Schurst, to also join us in the salon area of the podium. And I would like at this point to give the floor for the panel introduction to Professor Ronnie Belmans from Catholic University of Leuven and also CEO of Energyville. He will, of course, introduce you to the theme of the conference, the world's future power systems and emerging technologies. Panel participants are right there, and Professor Belmans will run the show from now on. So I'll just start up his presentation. We'd like to be ready around 5:45 for our welcome drinks. So, Professor Belmans, you have the floor.
This is, of course, a challenge. As you say, you can talk and have a debate as long as you want, but there is a drink at 5:45. Who am I to talk too much then? That was a clear message. Okay, future power systems and emerging technologies. And for those who are old enough, as I am, I have made a subtitle which says, "You ain't seen nothing yet." And BTO stands for Bagman Turner Overdrive, which is an old pop group that made that song. And that's really my feeling. We haven't seen yet too much. We are really seeing a paradigm shift in the power sector. We had the good old days where demand drives generation. But things are changing. If you look at what is happening with PV, and it was shown by one of the previous speakers, that in Europe, although China is leading and the US is second, but let's be honest, if we look per capita, we are much better off in Europe. We are really getting into challenges whenever. Does this work? Yeah. Whenever we are getting at lunchtime and really deep into the coal area, really things are not the same anymore. We will match supply and demand, but we will have several elements. We will have electric vehicles. We will have villages working. We have industrial sites. We will have a country and beyond. How can we make this balance happen? Do we need to balance as we did before on the level of Europe, on the level of each country, or are we going to balance in every home, in the village, in the city, in the industrial site? Where are we going to lay that balance? That's one of the systems things I will ask to the overall panel. If you look at the 10 years development plan in 2014, and you see all of the market integration and price zones, we will need about 100 major investments of 150 billion euros by 2030. If you see upgrades that we are going to build, and beyond that, we will have a lot of technology will need to be introduced in that grid. But we have hydro over here. We have wind in Ireland, for instance. We have the wind in the North Sea. But if you look at the population density, people do not like to live where there is a lot of wind. It's a bit different with solar. There, people do like to live with a lot of solar energy. So you see the difference between wind energy and solar energy. But anyway, we need those grids that can accommodate the electricity highways of the future. How are we going to build them? And what will be the technology used? If you look at the cities, we had historically centralized supply. And I urged you who are going to drive to the south of France for the holidays, the Dutch people and Belgians do that. If you come close to Paris, you see major high voltage lines going into Paris. You sometimes think it's getting dark, They're just high voltage lines that are bringing nuclear power from the coast over there. This is not going to be the case anymore. We will have large energy needs with space limitations. I always like that people are saying that the village in the south of Germany is now energy autarkic. If I have enough money and enough space, I can do an awful lot. But how are we going to do that in cities where we neither have space and neither have the money to do it? How are we going to go with more electrification, vehicles, pumps, heating in low energy buildings? How are we going to have flexibility, again, from all the systems and also the white goods? What are we going to do with phase shifting transformers? What are we going to do with storage devices? How are we going to work with small storage devices? If you look at distribution level, how are we going to install those batteries? Ladies and gentlemen, as people say, Tesla has done no invention, but he made the thing sexy. Let's be honest, the iPhone did not have any new component in it, but it changed the world. So are we going to see the same thing now with batteries? If we go to the good old days, we have pumped hydro, and it's still one of the major used things. Power to gas, will it come? I don't know. Some people are saying, even in Germany, we don't need it before 2035. So is this true? Is this what's going to happen? But we need to integrate the system. That's for sure. If we look at the utilities, if you look at the electrification of transport, electrification of heating, if we're going to go to low energy buildings, why would we still have a gas network passing the home? We are very much used to that in Holland and Belgium, but is this really a solution if you only have a demand of, say, 10% what we're used to now? Are we going to see thermal networks? Surplus heat being exchanged between buildings? And who is going to handle all that data? And here again, you see an awful lot of people saying that the data will be handled by the distribution companies. Are those companies really the best kids in town to handle that data? Or should we hand it over to KPN or anything like that? Or should we have providers of services that handle water, heat, comfort in the home as a whole? And again, we don't care as a consumer. Decentralized supply, a lot of PV, storage and flexible demand. Are we going to match that on a home level? Are we going to match that on a street level or in a village? Where is that balance? Who is the new aggregator of those services? For instance, in rural areas. I was a few weeks ago in Germany, in the south of Germany, and they were saying we're going to be energy autarkic. And I asked the mayor, okay, are you also in the local government? I asked him, doesn't it cost that much? Boah, no problem. And then somebody asked him, what is the average price of the building land here? And he said 10,000 euro per square meter if we allow you to buy something. For that kind of people, energy autarkic is not really a challenge financially. So we have microgrids, which are defined as local supply, low voltage. We have probably automatic transfer to alignment moding and back, recurrent synchronization, a lot of capacity installed, and really a technical challenge. Young colleagues, amuse yourself. So, to get in this panel and also to raise the questions, renewable energy sources are causing a paradigm shift in the power system. Generation will drive demand, and this is one of the things that I would like to discuss with the panel and also with the public. It will be much more volatile. Where is the problem situated? Is it between TSOs and DSOs? Or will DSOs solve everything and leave no problem to the TSOs. Would be fun to do so. Do we need more storage? Will it be offered by batteries or by demand? I heard one of the speakers say, we will see new operators of storage devices. Do we need a new type of operator? Or are aggregators going to aggregate storage and demand and supply? And are we not going to an energy system that's all totally integrated? So let's go for the debate now, and I hope that we can find some answers to my questions, but I have still some other questions, but I'm not going to use them if they answer correctly to this one. Thank you. To start the debate, I'm going to go to the City Council of Eindhoven. And I know that energy is always a very important thing for driving society. And also that political decisions are made to enable things. And energy is also used, for instance, for steering things and raising taxes to have people doing something. How will it be done? If people are going to operate their own house and being independent, how are you going to steer things if you don't have a centralized system anymore? Are you afraid of that? Do you take it into account that people will not be on the overall system and will be desocializing their energy?
Well, actually, if you look at it historically, in Eindhoven, the energy system was a private enterprise. And because of we confiscated it, because we thought it would be better if we would arrange it and to take care of the overall good of the people. And recently, we sold it. We thought it could be outside of our hands. So in the end, the question you have to pose is, what would benefit the public good? If you see the discussions about privatizations going on all the time, it was always about the market will do it better. And most often that is the case, but it still poses the question, how do you take care of the public good? And as such, there is no problem that people will take care of their own lives. Actually, we prefer it that way. Anyway, in Eindhoven, what the other thing is that all of us have to take care of society also. And what you see happening nowadays is that we are going for a new governance structure. So, oh, this is a bit awkward. Could you hold the mic that I can explain it? What is really happening is that we were going from a modernistic system, top-down, because we believed, especially in politics, that we knew best. And politics was something of political figures, not of society as such. And we failed miserably. Within the system, we reduced everybody to things. And so everybody said, well, let's do it different. Let's do it bottom-up. And what you see is that sometimes you can do it bottom-up if it's only important to you or a few persons around you or a small village. But in certain aspects, you need scale. And if, even within a village, what you have to do is to bring top-down and bottom-up together and rotate it 90 degrees. I'm at a technical university. 90 degrees for what we really need. And all the examples that you saw today illustrated perfectly. What you need is an egalitarian system in which you, as a whole, decide which way to go and in which everybody takes responsibility from their own situation. So it's the total democratization of where you are going. And sometimes it's small scale, and sometimes it's at a global scale. And what I see is, I don't believe that actually, because you posed a lot of questions, and I found them wonderfully interesting, and I don't think that we are able to answer them right now. So to me, it's really about experimenting with the transition of the system itself and doing it step by step, and in a way that you can always take a turn if you said, well, this step isn't the step that we actually should have made. And I firmly believe that to us, all of us, it's in the doing that we will really make progress. But it's not the doing only of us, but it's the doing of society as a whole. Everybody has a part to play as a producer of energy or whatever. And in the end, it's also about what is important. So all of us could live in the south of France, in a vast field with solar panels. But what on earth would we do there? Why do we live in cities? Because we want to do things together. So in the end, the solutions depend also on the choices you make. And the choices are, in a way, cultural. And one of the brilliant things that was stated was, as Europe, we are most apt to create, in complex situations, the solution. That is what we bring to the rest of the world. And it's something that we love to share. But that is really the difference that we will make. But how we will solve it exactly, I don't know. You know? Of course you know, you are a professor.
Professors raise questions at exams. I don't say that we know the answers. Okay, thank you. How is the Den Haag reacting on that?
Well, I have a simple answer. Don't expect all the solutions from the politics of The Hague, because that won't work. I saw, well, one of the presentations said that the regulation is the problem, and I agree completely on that. Because a regulator is most of the time regulating the past and not the future, because we don't know what the future is. So I fully agree that, well, one of the possibilities to solve this complex amount of questions, well, by experimenting. So we are trying to develop in our laws articles to experiment with decentralized, delocalized production, with combination of production and transmission and distribution altogether. So the other way around than we developed it 10 years ago. But I don't have the answer what the best solution is. I only know that we have to start, well, small steps. So the government is asked to not to regulate what we see now, but to let it go. And then, well, there will be a time that we have to agree on what kind of regulation we need for a different system. So it's a little bit preaching for a chaotic period of, well, do the best you can.
Laurent, I have a question for you. If you have, as a major competitor, supplier in this whole thing, you see and if we hear from decision makers that we see such a vague future, to say it that way, and a future which is vague and which was very much more simple before. It was 400 kV, one type of a switch yard, and we go for it. How can companies react to that? How should companies react to that?
So we have decided to move into that very chaotic world, I would say 3-5 years ago, where we launched a lot of demonstration projects, which are joint innovation projects, open innovation so-called, with utilities, technology vendors like ours, and end users, cities, creating these communities I was referring just before. And that was precisely because of that reason. So What we clearly see now is that we are at the end of a first wave of demonstrators. The good news is that we are optimistic it can work. We are very optimistic it can work on the technology side. Now the trick is to bring the consumer with us. I think that's very fundamental because our utility industry collectively has not been too active in terms of marketing as compared to other industries like the IT industry. And so I'm a true believer that the future is the winner is going to be the one finding the trick on finding people's minds, interests, minutes of the brain of people thinking around energy and sustainability and so on. And again, we see positive signs. Talking about this project I was referring just before, we start seeing consumers saying to us, we don't care about money. We don't do that for money. We do that for a future generation. We do that to support the neighbors. And I think that's really the true value also of this demonstrator is finding the new business model. And for instance, in France, we do a garbage selection across various types of garbage, and no one gets paid for that. It's just for the sake of, and I think we need to think beyond the box. We need to think into this new business model, and we'll find a way very quick.
Diego, there's a question on that one. Is the future going to be the big companies like Alstom, or going to be the startups that you are initiating with the KIC, going to be the challengers and are going to drive the change?
Alstom has been around for 100 years. So Alstom is an innovator, clearly, like Siemens or ABB or the big guys. So if they are still around, it's because they invest in their future, even if the future is uncertain. But definitely the disruptiveness will not come from those blue chips. It will come from the crazy guys that have nothing to lose, no market share to lose, no incumbent position to lose. It's for the challengers. So I reuse a word that you use, open innovation. So one of my stars, where I will put my money out of the 43 startups that we have created that are absolutely disrupt technologies, is a technology coming from a cardiologist. Oh, a cardiologist. What does it have to do with energy? Nothing. But we do open innovation. And the guy said, hey, which is the best pump that never breaks for 100 years, works nicely, takes the highest pressure just to give the small delta so the blood just continues? The heart. Let's mimic the heart. And now we're delivering in the one-to-one scale ocean energy that is mimicking the heart at 6 cents of a euro per kilowatt hour. So disruptiveness will come definitely from those that have nothing to lose. Incremental will come from those blue chips that absolutely need it. But everybody is required for the energy transition.
Mel, I have a question for you. How do companies like Tenet react on those disruptive technologies? You invested an awful lot in HVDC, certainly in the connection of the wind parks in North Sea, but that's also from flagships. But do you see already disruptive technologies of SMEs, small companies, newcomers that impact your business?
Well, the problem with our business is that two problems. First of all, the reliability of the components which we have in our system is so extremely good that there is hardly a drive for innovation. Why should you innovate if you have a highly reliable system? Secondly, the scale is extremely small. You see innovation in mobile telephones. Why? There's a large number of consumers, but the scale in this sector is limited. And that's my reasoning why you have seen hardly any innovation until now, hardly. But that's going to change, as I indicated, for two reasons. First of all, we need to do so for the renewable energy. And secondly, to increase the social acceptance. Therefore, we need innovations like cable 380 kV instead of overhead lines. So that will drive these two innovations. Yes, there will be companies with bright innovations, but there's also a good chance that the large industry will have the same attitude as Mercedes-Benz, for example, who clearly has a strategy. Okay, let Tesla develop, and as soon as Tesla has initiated the market for electrical cars, we, with the knowledge of production, will bypass them easily as soon as the market is there. So let them create the market, let them pave the way, and as soon as it's a success, we will come with our massive production capacity and we'll take over. So the question is, yeah, there will be innovators coming from totally different sectors, but I do think that companies which are in this league already for some time have the ability that as soon as something has a breakthrough, that they will be able to copy it. And my neighbor is already smiling, so probably they have that in mind. But there was a remark that the future is unclear. The funny thing from all the presentation, I think it's extremely clear that if you see the future develop, solar will be the winning formula. There's no doubt about it. Solar was the extreme cost reduction which we see. That will continue. And in my dreams, we will have a sort of foley on our window panels in our houses, which keeps out the heat of the sun and at the same time generates energy. So large volume, low cost, and very decentral, close to the consumer. But if you have solar, you need wind energy, because there's not always sun, and there often, if you look through the year, when there's low sun, there's a lot of wind. So wind and solar are highly complementary, and therefore wind will also be a part of the formula. Given the limited areas which we have in Europe for wind energy, offshore wind will therefore also, although the cost is slightly higher, will be a part of the future. And then the two elements still missing is storage. Yes, we will see breakthrough on battery storage on small scale with household, but also TSOs will apply large-scale batteries. And then the last part is the demand-side response. And I'm waiting, I'm looking to my neighbor. As a consumer talking now, I would like to have an energy bill where I pay for the price which is actually the price of that second. Technology-wise, that's possible. Let me pay for the price which is actually noted on the APX at that very moment. As soon as I have that, then I will react on price peaks. I will consume less when the APX is on a high level, and I will consume more when it's on a low level. And then batteries will be more attractive. So I think these things together will create a new market. And I do have the impression that it's pretty clear in which direction it's going.
Thank you. Let's come back to the renewable energy surroundings, the demand side driven, the storage devices and that kind of stuff. And come back to my question which I tried to initiate during my talk. Where are we going to balance? Are we going to balance at Homo Kroon and Homo Belmans? Or are we going to balance in Zandvoort and Duvel, which the two villages we are living in? Are we going to keep up with the countries as we do now, which we both do agree is not a good idea? But where is that balance going to be? Where is that system going to be technically balanced?
I guess that question is directed to me.
It's your business.
There will be two side directions. You should do balancing where it's most efficient. That's clearly the answer. So you will have two directions. First of all, there will be balancing really on a household level where people balance their own energy consumption with the batteries, balancing with knowing what the prices are at that very moment, therefore using less, which is a form of balancing. But there will also be a direction which we're working on now, trying to create a balancing market which is larger than just the Netherlands. Create a balancing market which covers a large part of Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands, and possibly even France. Because there, balancing can be a very efficient way of being done. So there will be interaction between the TSO Balancing Act and the DSOs who's taking care of the Balancing Act on the household level. But I think it's the wrong conclusion that you can say the balancing will in the future will be done only on a household level, because that will be suboptimal. There will be a total balancing which should be taken on an integral basis. So it asks for a exchange of data between the DSO and TSOs, which is quite a change. In the past, you saw that the world of the DSOs and the TSO were more or less separated. The TSOs were looking for integration in Europe. Well, that should continue, but at the same time, we should also look for integration really with the DSOs on data management for this balancing act.
Maybe I may add something. To an end user, the balancing of energy itself isn't so interesting. What they really want is quality of life. So it has to be integrated in their living environment. And they are ready to pay for an integrated service. So what we have always done is you got a silo that gave you something. So the real development is in creating services that are there for people also during a longer lifespan. So if they get older and if they need more care and things like that. So we are now looking at the built environment to include energy just as one part of the problems to solve, and to have an interface in which they are themselves virtually dabbling the knots and trying to investigate what kinds of knobs they really want to double. Because the interesting thing is everybody wants to do the right thing. So everybody wants to go for sustainable energy. And so they want us to take care of that part. But people really want to live their lives. All of us are very interested in how the energy will be produced. And in the end, they really want it solved. And they want to be a part of solving it in doing the right thing. But they don't want to have their life just dominated by energy.
Well, 90% doesn't care where the energy comes from, so I don't have that illusion.
That isn't true.
For me, it's absolutely true. We are talking about idlers. Yeah, there are a couple, and a couple who are doing something for feeling good in society. 90% is driven by other motives, that they have a comfortable life or that they can earn money. But if I talk about balancing on a household level, I don't mean that somebody on a household level should try to manage their energy balance. Not at all. There will be technology available which can be applied on a household level, which easily makes it possible that at peak moments your freezer is turned off for a couple of hours, which isn't a problem as long as you don't open the door too often. But with that, you're balancing. There will be technology available that you connect your car when you're not using it. Cars are only used in 70% of the time.
But the only thing I was stating
so that the balancing can be done by charging or recharging the battery.
But what you are doing is just to make a rationalized system. And what I'm saying is that what we see is the real paradigm change. Why are we talking about the societal challenges? Why is this whole university filled with people to make a difference? Because really we want to make a difference, but we want to make it together, but not all of us want to be involved in the same thing. So I fundamentally disagree with you. This is one hell of an age, because everybody really wants to do the right thing, but they want it to make easy for them to do the right thing.
I don't object if there are people who like to do the right thing. That's perfect. Let's do so. But if you want to have a support of 100% of the population, there should be a little bit more than doing the right things. But there's nothing wrong with it. I think that we are pushing for a new system where green energy is the production. That's clear. There's no discussion about that. But I like to have a rational system in which we can accommodate green energy and not base that on doing well for society, but that there's a functioning market which works.
As you well know, that there's not a slight chance that the business you are in now is not part of that future.
That's always possible. Of course, and we have seen we have seen industry which is going out of business. That's absolutely true. But and that's the remark of Professor Belmans in the beginning. Is there a possibility that the grids that some consumers will say we don't need interconnectivity with the grids anymore because we can be self-producing? Our calculations show that even if you manage to have a self-producing environment as a person or as a community, then it will be extremely difficult to have a reliability above the 90%. So you need the grids, the DSO grid and the TSO grids, to assure you of the 100% reliability continuously.
But that's, I don't think, although you pretend to do so, that you disagree that much. We are talking about, you are talking as a TSO, as technology provider, as a provider of the technological background, to serve the public that they shouldn't care. Okay, so that's my feeling. That's what you're saying. You're saying as a responsible politician, saying, okay, the people want to live in a sustainable way, but don't bother them with how to do that.
Exactly.
And you are saying, we have the technology to do so. And we need to be there, otherwise it won't work. So I think there are two sides of the same coin. But there is a technology provider who can give us more information on that.
So it's just a few learnings which we had from our project in the US and Europe. So first of all, I'm a firm believer that the consumer should not know the complexity of the system. That's the fundamental. So he has a way to interact with the system. Who is behind, whether it's a TSO, DSO aggregator, whatever, he must know it. He must have an offer. It's like when I go on Google, if Google has a partnership with someone else to supply me, I don't know, shoes, I don't know the complexity of the partnership which is behind the search I'm doing. Now, moving more to the TSO, DSO discussion, so first of all, I think it would be very dangerous to try to construct a system which is not interconnected. I think being the art of power system, being a power system engineer, we all know what means hierarchical controls. There is no reason why we cannot continue into the same principle. We have now coupled TSO markets together. It's just about coupling TSO market with DSO market, if I may be very simple. And so ensuring coordination of it, and for sure not pushing for independent microgrid in city, which in my opinion would be very significant overinvestment to the system if the grid is very close and nearby. So I think it's end up adding a new role clearly at the distribution, because this one does not exist, is maintaining the role of the TSO as a balancing entity. That's absolutely fundamental for the economical efficiency of the entire system with his neighbor TSO, and making the system work together with constraints. Physical constraint is very important. What we see, the more we go to the DSO, the more physical constraints. So the famous copper plates, which the TSO were using, I would say, when they introduced their regulation, I think maybe needs to evolve a bit. And by the way, with flow-based, we evolved the copper plate. So I think all that is moving, in my view, in the right direction. That's why I was saying I'm very optimistic.
So you do think we have a future? Okay.
Just to be provocative, if I may, Ronnie. So DSOs and TSOs today are extremely regulated businesses. Okay, so I don't know to which extent you can already forecast your revenue in the next years to come, but it's pretty realistic. Our view on the LSOs that I just depicted is that it's a real market-driven business model where there is an engagement between a service contract that has got a different pricing, and then consumers, users, name it the way you want, that will sign up for this offer. And I don't think that the current DSOs, they can evolve from the organizations and the model and the regulation that they will be living in for the last X years into this new purely market-driven model. That's our review. So that's why we believe there is a place for a new agent that in terms of services will be pretty much the same at a different aggregation level. But in terms of business modeling, has nothing to do.
If I look at the Dutch government as an example of many governments, and I always liked the saying that, okay, we have in Europe 28 energy policies, and how can we match that? But if I also see in the United States, you have the states with coal, you have the states with petroleum, you have the states with a lot of hydro, so there's as much difference in energy policy of the individual states in the United States as there is in Europe between the countries. What would be the steps from your point of view to push sustainability to a higher level from the countries to the European level, except for Brussels, quote unquote, saying you have to do 23.5% and the other has to do 27.5%. How can we make this a fluent mechanism? And how can we as electrical power engineers help you to accommodate that?
Well, if something is so complex as it is, you have to start with simplifying a little bit the course, because otherwise, well, you won't have a lot of discussions like this, but there won't be a solution. So I think it's very good to say that in some decades we are going to have a European energy union. That's the future. That's far away. Working for that union, you have to start on the smallest, let's say, combination you can make. So first of all, you have to work together bilateral between governments. And that's the reason that the Netherlands with Belgium, but also with Germany, is talking about how can we combine, for example, the capacity we have in the Netherlands, of the overcapacity we have, to share it with Germany. So the first level for the government is to do bilateral cooperation. And then on the other level is regional. So that's the reasoning why we agreed with the Pentalateral Forum, that's the Benelux, France, Germany, and also Austria and Switzerland, to let the TSOs work together to puzzle out in what way they can serve each other, for example, to prevent that you have to install capacity mechanisms in every single country. So if you would divide the European Union in, well, let's say, regions like we do, the Pentalateral or the Thousand Part of Europe, or the UK with Ireland and the Nordics, then that's the first step towards a real energy union. And I agree that's based on the idea that you need a centralized backup system. You need a big system if you want to have the reliability we have now, the 3 minutes or the 24 minutes in a year in the Netherlands. You don't can count on your current. That's 24 minutes a year. So if you want to remain that kind of indicators, you need a centralized system. So I would say first work on the combination of bilateral regional cooperation between the TSOs in the countries. And at the same time, experiment with decentralized differentiation of tariffs or equipment for demand-driven activities of households. Because we don't know exactly whether it's the price or it's the idea that drives people to save energy or to combine solar on the roofs with a backup system. So I would say start with the big change in the system.
Thank you.
Ronnie, if you allow, I certainly support this approach. I mean, if you do it with 27 member states in one step, it's impossible. So to cut it up, and for example, what the governments have done in the Netherlands, Germany, Belgium, and France, was really a wise step, which allowed to make these step forwards, like market coupling, flow-based market coupling, which are extremely complex, and which can only have been achieved by the support of the governments, the regulators, and the TSOs.
Thank you. Given the timing I was given, I think it's 5:45, and we all heard that Madeleine told us that there will be drinks at 5:45. So, who am I to? I want to thank you an awful lot for this interesting discussion, and we got a discussion that means that we are evolving to a new system there where we are going to get. And I have taken note of a few things, and we will see how the thing evolves. But I'm sure in 10 years, if we look back, it will not resemble where we are now. And that's what's very interesting to go. I don't know the answer where we are going to go to, but as they say, the way to heaven is paved by good ideas and hopeful things, so let's go for it. Thank you to all the panelists.